Inside every healthy leaf sits an enzyme that breaks down 40 million molecules of hydrogen peroxide each second. That single fact is the reason a $1 brown bottle from the pharmacy can land on your plants without burning them, and the reason most gardeners are using it wrong. That enzyme is called catalyst. Plants produce it in every chloroplast and peroxisome they grow. When hydrogen peroxide touches a healthy leaf, catalase splits the molecule apart almost instantly. The leaf is left with nothing but water and a faint puff of oxygen. Fungal spores do not have that defense. Powdery mildew, black spot, downy mildew, septoria, leaf spot, none of these pathogens carry the same enzyme shield. So when you mist a diluted hydrogen peroxide solution over an infected leaf, you are not coating the plant in poison. You are placing a chemical the plant can dismantle in seconds and the fungus cannot. This is the whole reason hydrogen peroxide works as a garden spray. Not magic, not chemistry hidden from the public, just a small evolutionary mismatch between the plants you grow and the diseases that target them. The first proposal to use this compound as a disinfectant came from an English physician named Benjamin Ward Richardson. He published the idea in The Lancet in 1858, alongside his work with John Snow on anesthesia. Nearly a century and a half later, you can buy his discovery for less than the price of a head of lettuce at the same store you fill your prescriptions. Does it actually do anything in your garden? In 2008, a peer-reviewed study published in the International Journal of Horticultural Science tested this spray on greenhouse cucumbers. Researchers used a 15 to 20 millimolar solution of hydrogen peroxide, roughly equivalent to a 1% dilution of the household 3% bottle. The numbers were striking. Powdery mildew severity dropped from 90% of affected leaf area down to 12%. But notice the detail buried in that paper. The spray was applied preventatively, before symptoms appeared on the plants, not as a rescue after the white dust had already coated half the bed. Hydrogen peroxide is far better as a shield than as a cure. If you remember nothing else from this video, remember that one line. Here is the working recipe most seasoned gardeners reach for. 1 tablespoon of standard 3% hydrogen peroxide to 1 cup of clean water. That gives you a roughly 1% solution. Mix only what you plan to use that day. Once diluted, the peroxide starts to break down within hours. Pour the mixture into a fine mist sprayer. Spray in the cool hours, early morning or the last hour before dusk. Never in the middle of the day. Ultraviolet light from direct sun tears the peroxide molecule apart before it can do its work, and wet leaves under hot sun can scorch. Both reasons point to the same advice. Wait for shade. Coat both sides of every leaf. Fungal spores hide on the undersides, where shadow keeps them cool and damp. If you spray only the tops, you have done about half the job. For prevention on plants you already know are vulnerable, squash, cucumbers, zinnia, monarda, roses, lilac, apply once a week through the growing season. If powdery mildew has already settled in, here is the honest truth. You will slow the spread, but not erase what is already there. Established colonies have pushed past the leaf cuticle. The white dust you can see on top is connected to a network you cannot see. Trim the worst affected leaves, drop them in a paper bag for the trash, and spray everything that remains. Spray on the calendar, not in panic. The gardeners who succeed with this method are the ones who treat it like watering, a weekly habit, not an emergency response. If you have been growing food for decades, you know the moment well. Late July, the squash leaves at the edge of the bed start showing that fine, pale dust. By August, it has crept onto the zucchini, then the cucumbers, then the melon vines. Most years, you accept the loss as part of summer. With a weekly preventive spray starting in early July before you see the first speck, the timeline changes. The same plants that used to die back by mid-August can stay productive into September. That is the difference between treating mildew like weather and treating it like chemistry. Here is what success looks like over 3 weeks of consistent spraying. Week 1, the existing dust stops spreading to new leaves. You will notice the youngest growth coming in clean. Week 2, the older affected leaves may yellow and drop, but the plant beneath is still putting out healthy stems. Week 3, the new canopy looks the way it did in June. The plant has not been cured. It has been given the time to grow past the problem. That is the realistic goal. Here is the part of the science that turns a simple fungicide into something more interesting. Hydrogen peroxide is not only a molecule that kills pathogens on contact. Inside the plant, it is also a signal. A 2016 review in Frontiers in Plant Science, written by Wojtyla and colleagues, walked through the evidence in detail. When a plant senses hydrogen peroxide on its leaves, it begins to produce defense compounds even in tissue the spray never directly touched. The technical name for this is systemic acquired resistance. The chemistry behind it involves crosstalk with nitric oxide, calcium ions, and the same plant hormones that govern flowering and stress response. The practical translation is simpler. A light hydrogen peroxide spray on Tuesday teaches the plant to be ready for trouble on Friday. A drought spell, a heat wave, a fresh wave of spores blown in from a neighbor's garden. The plant has already turned on the defense genes. For gardeners who have watched the same tomato patch for 30 summers, this is where the deeper value lives. You are not just treating today's mildew, you are giving the plant a head start on next week's stress. That is a different kind of gardening from what the bottle on the garden center shelf is selling you. Think about what that means in practice. The tomatoes you spray in early June, before any sign of trouble, are still benefiting from that spray when the heat dome rolls in during the second week of July. The roses you misted on a quiet Sunday morning carry that primed immune response into the wet stretch that follows the next storm. None of this requires more work than you are already doing. It only requires doing it at the right time, before the plant needs rescuing. The plants you grow have survived for hundreds of millions of years by listening to signals. Hydrogen peroxide is one of the oldest signals they recognize. Everything covered so far, the foliar spray, the dilution math, the timing, is the surface layer. The full method has a lot more to it. A precise schedule for different vegetables, a troubleshooting guide for plants that react badly, the exact ratios for tougher diseases like black spot on roses and early blight on tomatoes, and the sensitive plant list in writing so you do not have to remember which ones need extra caution. That kind of detail belongs in a written reference you can keep near the watering can, not in a video you have to scrub through to find the one chart you need. You can find a blueprint that lays it all out: concentrations, calendar, sensitive plant list, and a one-page cheat sheet for soil drench versus foliar spray. Consider it a tool for your gardening notebook. The next part of this video gets into what happens beneath the soil line, where most plants are quietly losing the fight you cannot see. The trouble most plants do not survive begins below the soil. A tomato that wilts in the morning recovers by evening, then wilts again the next day. Pothos leaves yellowing from the bottom up, no matter how careful you are with the watering can. The smell of something soured rising from a pot you have not moved in weeks. That is root rot. And the worst instinct, the one nearly every kind-hearted gardener follows, is to water more. The plant looks thirsty, the leaves are limp, so out comes the can and the plant gets worse. The diseases that cause root rot, Pythium, Phytophthora, Rhizoctonia, Fusarium, share one trait. They thrive in waterlogged soil where oxygen has run out. Their world is the anaerobic pocket at the bottom of an overwatered pot, or the compacted clay layer 6 inches under a vegetable bed after a wet spring. This is where hydrogen peroxide does its second job. When you pour a diluted solution into that suffocating soil, two things happen at once. The peroxide reacts directly with the pathogens, oxidizing their cell walls, and as it breaks down, it releases oxygen into the exact zone where the roots have been starving for it. Mix 1 tablespoon of 3% hydrogen peroxide into 1 cup of water. Drench the soil around the base of the plant enough to saturate the root zone, but not enough to overflow. Listen close. You will hear a soft fizz from the soil surface. That sound is the chemistry happening underneath. A few honest caveats. Roots that have already turned black and slimy are dead. Hydrogen peroxide will not bring them back. What it can do is halt the spread, give the surviving white roots room to breathe, and buy you the window you need to repot or improve drainage. If the plant is in a container, slide it out, trim the rotted roots with sterilized scissors, refresh the soil, and drench once more after replanting. For an outdoor bed where root rot has been a recurring problem, common in heavy soils after a wet spring, a monthly soil drench through the wet season can prevent the slow buildup of pathogen populations. The plants you save are the ones you would not have noticed losing. There is one diagnostic detail worth committing to memory. Healthy roots smell faintly sweet, like fresh-cut potatoes or rain on stone. Rotted roots smell sour, sometimes sharp, sometimes faintly like a forgotten ditch. If you slide a struggling plant out of its pot and that sour note hits you before you even look at the roots, you have your answer. Trust the nose. It catches the problem before the eyes do. There is one more way to use hydrogen peroxide that almost no gardener thinks about: on the seed itself before it ever sees soil. If you have a coffee tin or a shoebox of old seeds tucked in a drawer, heirloom tomatoes saved from your mother's garden, beans put away 3 summers ago, packets of zinnia from a county fair, those seeds may seem dead. Often they are not. They are dormant or coated with mold spores that will rot them before germination. A research team at North Carolina State University and the U.S. Forest Service, working through the Camcor Conservation Program, tested this on Atlantic white cedar, a species notorious for poor germination rates. A simple hydrogen peroxide soak nearly doubled seed germination compared to other sterilization treatments. The peroxide killed the surface pathogens that had been quietly destroying viable seeds before they could sprout. The 2016 review looked at the broader picture across many crop species. Hydrogen peroxide soaks shift the internal hormone balance of the seed. Abscisic acid, which keeps seeds dormant, drops. Gibberellic acid, which drives sprouting, rises. The hard outer coat softens at the same time the seed wakes up because the chemistry inside it has been told to. The method is simple. Mix 1 tablespoon of 3% peroxide into 1 cup of clean water. Soak the seeds for 15 to 30 minutes, no longer. Rinse with plain water and plant immediately. Keep the soil warm and the surface damp until you see the first green. Try this on the seeds you would otherwise throw away. The ones that did nothing in last year's tray. The packets past the printed date. Many will surprise you. The lifeline was never gone, just sealed under a coat the seed could not break on its own. There is a particular kind of satisfaction in watching a seed sprout that you almost composted. Maybe it is a bean variety your father grew that nobody sells anymore, or a flower from a packet your grandmother labeled in pencil 30 years ago. The hydrogen peroxide soak does not work miracles, but it gives you one more chance with seeds that deserve one. Take notes on which ones respond. Build a small habit of testing old seed each February, 6 weeks before the indoor sowing dates for your zone. By the time the trays go out, you will know what you have. Most experienced gardeners have noticed something they cannot quite explain. After a heavy summer thunderstorm, plants look different the next morning. Not just wet, vivid. The leaves seem to glow in a way that municipal water from a garden hose never produces. This is not a trick of the light. In 1999, geochemists Yuegang Zhao and Yue Deng published a study in the journal Geochimica et Cosmochimica, ACTA, documenting what happens during electrical storms. Lightning passing through humid air drives chemistry that produces measurable amounts of hydrogen peroxide in the falling rain. They tracked concentrations in Miami rainfall for more than a year. During thunderstorms, peroxide levels rose with the lightning activity. The wider atmospheric chemistry that makes peroxide in clouds, photochemistry, ozone, volatile organic compounds reacting with sunlight, has been running since long before humans noticed it. This is part of the natural background chemistry that has watered every plant for as long as plants have existed. When you spray a properly diluted hydrogen peroxide solution on your garden, you are not introducing something foreign. You are echoing a process that nature has been running quietly above your head for hundreds of millions of years. That is the right way to think about this brown bottle. Not as a miracle, but as a small, ordinary piece of the chemistry plants have always lived with, concentrated enough to be useful in your hands. A reasonable question lingers at this point. If hydrogen peroxide is this effective, this safe, and this cheap, why are the garden center shelves stacked with branded fungicides instead? The answer is not a secret being kept. Hydrogen peroxide was first registered with the EPA as a pesticide ingredient in 1977. It was approved specifically for use on growing plants in 1998. As of recent USDA records, more than 160 commercial pesticide products on the market contain it as an active ingredient. It is on the labels of organic certified fungicides and conventional ones alike. The reason it is not advertised more is the same reason no one runs television commercials for table salt. Hydrogen peroxide has no patent protection. Any chemistry plant can produce it. Margins are slim. There is no budget for glossy packaging or magazine spreads. Companies selling $60 branded fungicides cannot afford to remind you that the same active ingredient sits in a brown bottle for under $2 at the corner pharmacy. This is a market story, not a conspiracy. The product was never hidden. It was simply never profitable enough to promote loudly. A few rules earn their place before you reach into the medicine cabinet. 3% is the only concentration you need. The brown bottle at the pharmacy is already pre-diluted for safe handling. Stronger grades, like 35% food grade used by some commercial growers, require gloves, eye protection, and careful dilution. There is no advantage to starting with the stronger version for a home garden. Buy the household bottle. Never spray in midday sun. Ultraviolet light degrades hydrogen peroxide rapidly, and wet leaves under direct sun can scorch. Early morning is best. The last hour before dusk is the second choice. The light is softer, the air is cooler, and the spray has time to do its work before evaporation pulls it off the leaf. Never mix hydrogen peroxide with vinegar in the same container. The combination forms peracetic acid, a stronger oxidizer that is harsh on plant tissue and on your lungs. Both work fine on their own. Together, they cause problems neither would alone. The same rule applies to mixing with neem oil. Use one, then the other on different days. Always test before treating a whole plant. Missed one leaf with your prepared solution? Wait 48 hours and check for bleaching, browning, or wilting. If the leaf looks the same, the rest of the plant will be fine. If it does not, dilute further before going forward. A few species deserve extra caution. Orchids, African violets, ferns, peace lilies, and most plants with thin or fuzzy leaves react more strongly than tougher crops. For those, use half the standard concentration, roughly half a tablespoon per cup of water instead of a full one, and test more carefully. One practical note for those of us who have been gardening 40 years and know what aching knees feel like. Use a light spray bottle. Fill it half full so it stays manageable. A 2-liter sprayer full of water weighs more than 4 pounds, and that weight rides on the wrist for the whole job. Half full saves the joints. Spray sitting down where you can. A low stool, the edge of a raised bed, a folding chair brought out for the morning. The garden will still be there tomorrow. If you have hand strength that comes and goes, and many of us do after enough decades of pulling weeds and turning compost, invest in a small electric or battery-powered spray bottle. The good ones cost about $20 at the hardware store. They take the pressure off the trigger finger entirely. Press a button, hold the wand, and let the motor do the work. The same nozzle that wears out your hand at noon will feel weightless at 6 in the morning when you actually want to be spraying. The right tool for the right job is not vanity. It is the reason you still want to be out here next summer and the summer after that. Most garden wisdom that lasts is not loud. It does not arrive in a bright package on a hardware store shelf. It sits quietly on a shelf the rest of the house already trusts, waiting for someone patient enough to notice what it can do. A brown bottle, clean water, the morning hour before the sun gets sharp. That is the whole method. The plants will tell you the rest. If this exploration of the hidden chemistry in your medicine cabinet has changed the way you look at your garden, please subscribe to the channel and like this video. We are uncovering the natural secrets that have been right in front of us all along. Let's cultivate a better future together. Our next deep dive into the wonders of the growing world will be opening soon.